In this video, I'll give you my final picks for UFC 301. As always, you can call me KUNATH. Let's make some money this week. Now, a quick update for those of you that don't know, the fight between Silva and Gomis is off. Unfortunately, my brother William looked like a skeleton wrapped in electrical tape up there on the scales today. He's obviously sick, got some medical stuff going on. Wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope these guys can fight down the line, but there's going to be no fight with them, so we won't talk about them in the lineups, we won't talk about them for value plays, and really for Draftkings, that's a fight you probably didn't want anyway. But with that out of the way, we can dive into what you need to do to be successful on this Draftkings slate this week. If you haven't already, watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That's a full card breakdown. That's where we talk about each of these fights in greater detail. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Now, for this week's pay-per-view, you've got fighters like Pereira, Borralho, Petrino, Bonfim, just huge favorites. So we're really going to have to hunt for some value this week. Value plays are fighters that are essentially underdogs, 8,000 salary and below on Draftkings, and you're going to need some of them in your lineups if you want to build them correctly. Our first value play, not somebody who I expect to win. I actually have Alessandro Costa to win this fight by decision, but like we talked about last week, when a fight goes the distance, you're always in it, especially if it's a competitive fight, especially if they spend most of the time on the feet. Just look at the fight with Mays and Machado. Just look at the fight with Hubbard and Figlak. Just look at the fight with Mahashate and Gabriel Benitez. Some of those Mowgli Benitez bettors out there were holding on to those tickets tight while the split decision was being read. But the scoring criteria leaves a lot of gray area. There's judging performances. So I say that to say this. If a fight goes the distance and it was competitive through each of the rounds, you are always in it from a judge's scoring perspective. You can sit on Twitter all day long and see people say robbery one way, robbery the other. Most of the time, these people are holding tickets for the side that they think was robbed. But oftentimes, these fights are so close that it's hard to really call anything a robbery. Lots of close fights last week. I don't think there was a single robbery. I had a ticket for Austin Hubbard, but Michael Figlak ends up losing the fight. I thought he won the fight. For those reasons, Kevin Borjas is very interesting this week as a value play because I think this fight goes the distance. I even have a bet on KUNATH'S. Spoiler alert for this, going over 2.5 rounds. Reason being is because Kevin Borjas doesn't throw with a ton of power. He's more of a volume guy. Costa is durable in his own right, and Kevin Borjas has never been finished before. My guess is these guys are going to have a close, competitive fight over 15 minutes. I think Costa's going to try to lean on his grappling a bit more, but I think Borjas is going to throw more strikes, and as a result, he's probably going to land more strikes in this fight. If I had to pick a winner, I'm still picking Costa by decision, but for a Draftkings play, if you're running multiple lineups, you're going to want some exposure to Borjas. First fight of the night, those show up on the optimal lineup all the time. I would not be surprised to see him land north of 100 significant strikes this week. He might even get a knockdown as well. And if he keeps the activity high, keeps working over these 3 rounds, ends up stealing a decision, I could see him breaking 80 Draftkings points down at 8,000, and he's probably coming in at around 15% ownership or less. So don't be afraid to take a shot on Kevin Borjas, even if you don't love him this week, even if you think Costa's going to win. If you're running multiple lineups, I recommend you be overweight to the field to the Peruvian. And our next value play is only $100 cheaper on Draftkings, and Jose Aldo is going to make sure that Kevin Borjas is not getting a whole lot of ownership. On a card that's so favored heavy, you're going to see people flock to the co-main event spot like you have here, the name recognition in Jose Aldo. If Jose Aldo and Jonathan Martinez's prices were flipped, I still think Jose Aldo would be the same ownership. I think he's going to come in higher owned than Jonathan Martinez, but rightfully so because I think he wins this fight. Like we talked about in the predictions video from earlier in the week, I think Aldo's defense is going to be the deciding factor in this fight. Jonathan Martinez is a cannon. He throws ridiculously heavy calf kicks. He's finishing fights with these calf kicks. He's also taking guys down when he wants to, but Jose Aldo, great leg kick defense. Takedown defense that is as good as it gets, some of the best that you'll ever see. And despite him being 37 years old, athletically, I feel like he is still just as good as a lot of the younger guys in his division, especially somebody like Jonathan Martinez. When you're building your lineups this week, you're going to want some Jose Aldo if you're playing in a large field contest. I would recommend being slightly underweight to the field if you can get there, but for single entry, I'm staying far, far away. The reason why I say that is because when you look at some of these decision wins, he's not scoring a whole lot of points. I don't expect him to wrestle at all this week. You look at these fights here, against Merab, he scores 19 and a decision loss. You flip that the other way, he only scored 49 because of the 30 points from a decision win. And you can argue KUNATH, if he won a decision, he would have landed more strikes, he would have done more. Okay, add 30 points to that score, he scored 79 points. At decent ownership, I would imagine. Then you've got the fight against Rob Font. Over 5 rounds, he scores 103. That's not bad, but he also has 2 knockdowns in there. You take away the knockdowns, he only scored 83 points. 76 points in a 3-round win over Pedro Munoz. 60 points against Chito Vera in that decision. You got a couple of losses there. You look at the knockout over Moicano in the 2nd round, only 80 points. 1st round finish over Jeremy Stephens evens, yeah, you're going to post the score over 100. That's excellent. But if he doesn't go out there and finish Jonathan Martinez early, then he's not going to reach that ceiling. Because look at here, 5 rounds against Frankie Edgar, he only scores 64 points. Goes to war with Chad Mendes, 87 points over 5 rounds. 79 points against Ricardo Lamas over 5 rounds. 61 points in a decision win there. 89 points in a 4th round finish. And that's a fight where he got 5 takedowns in. So I say that to say this, don't expect Jose Aldo to reach that 90 plus point scoring ceiling this week. He's one of the value plays because I think he's one of the better underdogs in this card. I think he's going to be able to shut down the leg kick from Martinez. I think his boxing is better than Martinez. I think he gets to decide if this fight is on the feet or not more than Martinez does. He should win by decision. But you take somebody like him and Kevin Borjas side by side. If Kevin Borjas wins by decision, scores you 83 points, and Jose Aldo wins by decision, scores 66 points at really high ownership, we know where the better play was. And before we get into the next value play, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. It's all good luck. I'm not going to tell you where I heard that, but it's good luck. Now we're going to jump a few spaces. Malarkey would be an absolute slate breaker if he did win, because I think the Huffy ownership is going to be very high. Jack Shore, he scores well when he wins fights. You see here 94, 105, 87, 93, 109, 102. But Joanderson Brito is absolutely different gravy. So I think Brito is going to pack him up as well. Gomis is out. You've got Joaquim Silva here, but I don't think that he's going to go out there and knock Drakkar close out, which is his only path to victory. So the next value play that I would consider putting in lineups this week would be the other side of the main event in Steve Erceg. I have Steve Erceg winning this fight because I think he matches up physically very well with Pantoja, being the bigger guy, the taller guy, the longer guy. He's much fresher. He hasn't taken as much damage. His chin is in a better spot than Pantoja's. Granted, Pantoja does have a great chin, but Erceg is a fantastic grappler. He's going to be able to hang with Pantoja on the mat. I think on the feet, he's going to be a bit cleaner. I think he's going to flow a bit better. Like we talked about in the predictions video, I think he's more comfortable touching Pantoja while Pantoja's trying to load up. Even if he does land, I think Erceg eats it. That chin is no joke, and I really like that left hand from Erceg, and not just because he knocked out Matt Schnell with it, but because it's active, and we've seen Pantoja hurt with a left hand before. Down at 7,400 with 5 rounds to work, I don't think there's a world where he scores like 70 points like he did in his UFC debut against David Dvorak. Granted, that was at 6,800, so he probably might have been optimal. He was definitely a good single entry play that week. He hasn't hit that 100 point scoring ceiling yet, but down at 7,400, if you're getting anything, I would say north of around 87 like here, then you're in a good spot. And with 5 rounds to work, it's hard for me to see him not doing that. Our next value play is going to be Elves Brener here, and I see Brener sharing videos on social media of him cutting weight with other people in his little sauna thing. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't think a guy who posts that is going to lose. He's digging deep, he's sacrificing, and let me tell you something, there's a lot of hype coming in on this Orolbai character, and I understand why. He looked great against Uros Medic when he was able to close distance. We've seen Medic folded under pressure like that. We've seen Medic get taken down and finished pretty quickly, like against Jalen Turner, for example. Elves Brener's never been finished. For Brener, he's just gritty, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes you have matchups where guys are very athletic versus guys who are very good fighters. I think Orolbai is a unique combination of both. I think he's a hyper athletic guy who's got a very effective style, and he's going to win a lot of fights, but I think Elves Brener is just a great fighter. And what I mean by that is he's not elite at any one thing. He's not the sharpest striker. He doesn't have ridiculous power, although he's coming off of a first round knockout. He's not the best grappler you've ever seen. He's not the best wrestler you've ever seen, but he's somebody who's not going to go away. He's going to keep making you work. He's going to keep putting volume in your face even when he's tired, and he's just going to make it a tough fight. You've never seen somebody have an easy fight against Elves Brener, so I don't think that changes this week. I think he goes out there, wins this fight, shocks everybody down at 7,200, and he does have access to that 100-point ceiling. We see in back-to-back fights now. Again, he's coming off that first round knockout. We saw him close out Guram in the 3rd round after he was losing probably the first 2 rounds. So that knockout power gets carried late into these fights. That heart is carried late into these fights, and I think Brener is going to survive that first round, make it dirty in that 2nd round, but then in the 3rd round is really when he's going to come out guns blazing, and I think he's going to have a lot more left in the tank than Orolbai will. So great play down at 7,200. One more value play. Karolina Kowalkiewicz down at 7,000. She's got a situation on her hands where even if she loses, the scoring floor is very, very nice. Lucindo's got to put her wrestling shoes on this week, because if she gets stuck on the feet, which I assume she will, she's going to have to deal with volume that she's never seen before. She's only 22, and with that limited experience, a lot of fights go your way. She fights Iasmin Jauregui, doesn't have much for her. But then she gets that layup in Brogan Walker. She goes on to beat Polyana Viana, who's a bit one-dimensional. But for Karolina, since that fight against Jessica Penne, she has just been on fire fighting her best. And we talked about this in the predictions video. Maybe it's level of competition. Erceg, not UFC caliber anymore. Gomez Juarez can't defend a takedown. Vanessa Demopoulos is a liability on the feet. Diana Belbizia is not physically strong enough to win a whole lot of fights in the UFC. And I know that sounds critical and it's very easy for me to say from behind a camera, but that's what it's looking like when you watch these people fight and you're not working with a sample size of one fight or something like that. All of them have decent amounts of UFC experience and you're noticing that they're just not getting it done. So for Karolina, with her experience to get these wins, it wasn't a surprise at all. I mean, she was favored in 3 of her last 4 fights. And just to give you an idea of what that scoring floor looks like, just mathematically speaking, if you were to add the strikes and significant strikes together and you multiply that by 0.2, there's a good chance that between the significant strikes and the total strikes, you're going to get a number around 290. So you take 0.2 of that, that's going to give you about 58 points. So even in a loss, she could be breaking 50 points, and down at 7,000, I don't think anybody else near her price is going to be able to give that to you in a loss. Great value down at her price. Those are all of the value plays. We'll start using some of these pieces to build lineups. We'll start with cash game lineups. Now, before we build the cash game lineup, I want to address something I saw in the comments last week. Somebody said, hey, KUNATH, I got the 4 winners in my cash game lineup and I still didn't win. Yes, that makes sense. And the reason for that is because Mateus Nicolau gave you nothing. That's the danger of stacking the main event. You can get a guaranteed winner, but you can also get a chance where somebody scores you a goose egg or close to it if they're finished early or don't do very much. That's the tough part about stacking the main event. So I'm going to give you 2 lineups here. We can give you 2 different ideas. First, we'll stack the main event because this is a fight that I think will be competitive. I think there's a good chance that it does go the distance as well. We'll start with this and then we will build a cash game lineup where we don't stack the main event if you're trying to chase 5 or 6 winners more than just that floor of 4 that we're normally looking for. I get that. 84.50 left over per fighter as usual. I'm going to come down here and grab a punt play. We've buried the lead already. I can't not tell you to play Karolina if she's going to score you damn near 60 points in a loss. 89.33 left over per fighter. You can come up here and grab somebody like Drakkar Klose. You can grab Joanderson Brito. You've got 9,600 left over and you can grab anybody that you want. But now we'll blow this up and we'll build a different cash game lineup where we're going to come down here and Karolina's going to be that first piece. 8,600 left over per fighter. I'm probably going to come here to Huffy. I'll come here to Brito, and now I've got 8,700 left over. I've got Drakkar Klose. Now you're in a spot where you're going to have to play another underdog. At this point, I'm just going to grab me some Jose Aldo. That way I have 9,500 left over, and I've put myself in a similar position. We can't get Michel himself, but let's say you wanted to go with Vitor Petrino in this situation. You left 100 salary on the table, but you do have access to a higher scoring ceiling, maybe not the same scoring floor because you don't have that guaranteed winner from the main event, but if you wanted to attack your cash game lineups with this, I would feel good about it. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. Now we can get into building some tournament lineups, but before we do, if you want access to the DFS strategy guide as well as the tools that might help you build better lineups for your tournaments, you can visit KUNATH'MMA.com, go up to plans, grab the plan that works best for you. If you want a lineup optimizer to build, generate, and create more lineups for your tournaments in a shorter amount of time using tools and projections and things like that, you can grab the optimizer for $5.99. If you want the optimizer and everything else, the DFS strategy guide, the official betting article for the week, access to the community forum, that's in the total access package, that's $24.99. Obviously the best value, the best way to support the channel. And just a heads up, the lineup optimizer does work for Draftkings Classic mode and for Captain mode. It updates automatically for Captain mode. We did change the Gomis and Silva projections to 0 with 0% ownership, although they'll probably pull like 0.2, 0.5% ownership. But we've adjusted it so that the lineup optimizer is not going to give you those when you start building your lineups, but you can also set that as a rule. You could set as many rules as you want to get it to dance the way that you want. Shout out Al Smizzle. But again, that could all be found on KUNATH'MMA.com. Best way to support the channel. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Now let's build some tournament lineups. Okay, so for your tournament lineups, there are a couple of different ways that you can go. Obviously, people are going to want to play people at this top range like Michel, Caio, Vitor, Ismael. You can go for it. Now, if we wanted to go for a grappling heavy lineup, I would say you probably go with somebody like Borralho. You want to grab Ismael Bonfim in there, not because he's the greatest grappler or the most willing grappler, but Vince Pichel has struggled with takedown defense in the past, and I would expect Bonfim to take the path of least resistance because it's going to be there. 7,800 left over. We're going to go with another grappler in Barbosa. 7,400 left over. I'd probably come down here and grab Brener. I might grab Steve Erceg at this point. 7,700 left over. With these options, I'll find myself here to grab a Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Left 700 salary on the table. I'm cool with this. Let's blow it up and build something new. Now, if we want to attack some scoring ceiling, let's say we went with Orolbai here. If he did anything close to what he did in his UFC debut, he's going to post a high DraftKings score. 8 significant strikes and 7 takedowns should be banished by law, but that's the world that we live in. So 9,000 for Orolbai there. I'm going to go back to Barbosa for the grappling advantage. I'm going to go with Brito. I'm going to go with Huffy for that knockout upside. 7,600 left over. I might go with Erceg, and at this point, you almost were able to afford, Jose Aldo. So I'd probably find myself getting back down here to somebody like Karolina. You could pick somebody else if you want, but let's blow this up, try something new. Now, if you feel like favorites are going to dominate, and not just these ones at the top, but just overall, then you're probably going to want to live in that mid-range like Chris Bosch. So let me grab Borjas. Let me come up here to Huffy. Let me grab somebody like Brito. Now you're probably going to have to grab Aldo down here to get a little bit of breathing room. Maybe one more underdog. I'll grab Erceg here, and now we can come up and grab anybody we want. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 fighters that are really in that middle tier. If I had 9,800 left over, I'm probably going to snag somebody up here in the top 4. Now, if you are of the mind that these people online are crazy because they're saying Steve Erceg is going to win, I think Pantoja is going to dog walk him, because I know that there are some of you out there want to give you a look, want to give you that representation. We can put him in there. At this point, I would go Brito. Let me grab somebody like Klose just to give you a more unique look. I'm going to grab Brener there. I'm going to grab Jose Aldo at 7,900, 8,900 left over. Typically, I would not recommend using all of the salary, but there are time and time again where all of the salary is working in the big contest, so don't be afraid to use it in some of your lineups. You don't want every lineup to use as much salary as possible. There are going to be times where you want to leave 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 salary on the table. Sometimes over 1,000 is going to work for you. But like we always talk about on the channel, you want your lineup to be able to tell a story. Well, you've got the champion, 5 rounds to work, coming off of massive scoring performances. 143 back-to-back is absurd. You've got Joanderson Brito, who's going to post a good score every time he wins. Came out and starched Andre Fili in the first 45 seconds or so. So you got 133 there, 131, excuse me, and I think he could do that again. Drakkar Klose is the question mark wild card of the lineup, and I think most of your lineups should have a guy like this where it's just historically you've not scored well, brother, at all. Elves Brener, we've talked about that. Jose Aldo, we've talked about him. Diani Barbosa is what fixes this lineup for you despite using all the salary. 8,900 for a woman making her UFC debut on a card that is a pay-per-view card with a lot of big favorites, a lot of name recognition. People aren't clicking this button, I'm telling you that now. Then when you account for control time, maybe some ground and pound to open up the submission, maybe she finds herself in a dominant position and Karolina cannot get back up. Maybe she spends most of the round on top, landing her strikes, softening her up, and then she submits her late in the first and has access to 106, 107, 108 type score, and nobody's getting here. You're talking less than 10% ownership, definitely less than 15% if I had to say something more confident. I'd be shocked to see anything more than 15% on Diani Barbosa, and that's why she makes this lineup work. Now, just as an experiment, let's see how many, is it possible to get maybe 2 of these higher priced guys in there? So let's say we went with somebody like Petrino, and let's just go Bonfim, the lower part of that range. And now we come down here, we grab our Karolina, we grab our Erceg. Let's say we even grab Brener. Then can we get one more? We can get one more. Give me Michel. Now you've got 100 salary left on the table, but you've grabbed 3 of the 4 at that top range. You're playing Karolina, who nobody wants any part of. You've got Erceg for that leverage over Pantoja. I like it. Again, these are all ideas for lineups. You can enter them if you want. I know for other sports like NFL and stuff like that, people will make quick lineups and say, don't enter this lineup, do whatever, but it's MMA. It's a bit more limited. So if some of your lineups look like the ones in the video, that's fine. It's going to happen. But we do it as a thought exercise. We do it because it's fun. If you want, again, the tools to be able to build lineups, maybe use a piece of technology that is smarter than you to build these lineups, you can go grab that optimizer, grab Total Access Package, all on KUNATH'S MMA.com. Now let me give you some free money so you can start paying for this stuff. Next, we're looking at Underdog Fantasy, partner of the show, matching your first deposit up to $100 when you use promo code KUNATH or my link link that'll be in the description and in a pinned comment. I'm going to give you the can't miss slip this week. 5 picks, the best picks you've ever seen. So here are the 5 picks. These are the 5 best picks you've ever seen in your life, and we're going to explain all of them right now. Jose Aldo, 54.5 significant strikes. We will take the higher there. That's a fight that probably goes the distance. They're going to be striking the whole time. Jose Aldo's going to let his hands go, and I see him landing about 20 to 30 significant strikes per round. I think most of the strikes that he lands will be counted as significant as well, so I don't think that Jose Aldo goes under that number at all. Borralho finishes this fight however he wants. Joanderson, Brito, they're actually giving us a bit of a multiplier on a finish, and that's his whole game. I don't think Brito wins any other way outside of inside the distance this week. This number here on Karolina's significant strikes is absolutely laughable. She's probably going to go 3x over that number if it goes the whole 15 minutes, and then Costa's fight going over 2.5 rounds essentially with higher than 12.5 minutes of fight time. We'll take that all day long. Times 24 multiplier. We're going to go 25 on it. It's going to pay out 600. I'm happy with that. The picks are in. Again, we have Aldo higher than 54.5, Borralho higher than a finish for Brito, higher than 48.5 significant strikes for Karolina, and then basically the cost of fight going the distance if you want a free way to do this. Again, you can use promo code KUNATH when you make your first deposit, or you can hit the link in the description or in a pinned comment. They will match that first deposit up to $100. Use their money to play this slip, win more money, and then it's house money. Then you've won for free basically. And the last thing you're going to hear me say about links is there's going to be a link to the $1 winner take all contest for viewers of the channel. That's going to be on Draftkings this week. You can hit the link in the description or in a pinned comment. It will bring you there. $1 winner take all. The more of you that join, the bigger that prize pool gets. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Again, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I wish you the best of luck this week.